The Good Humor Man is a 2005 film written and directed by Tenney Fairchild, and we have a cast including Nathan Stevens, Jorge Garcia, Cameron Richardson, Jason Segel, and my personal favourite, Kelsey Grammer. And I watched this because of Kelsey Grammer, and sometimes when I watch a film because of a certain actor, I will discover films that I otherwise wouldn't have watched but really enjoyed. And unfortunately, this really isn't one of those films. I really did not enjoy this. I think it's largely down to personal preference, and I will explain what I mean by that in a moment. But I also found the narrative to be quite slow. So even if it's your kind of story, I think it's still a little slow. And I really, really hated a lot of the characters. I'm not sure if that's personal preference or how they're written, so it might be an okay film if it appeals to you. I'd love to know what you think, but personally, it did not work for me. It's kind of a coming-of-age story, and we focus on various characters who, quite near the beginning of the film, get into a bit of a criminal situation. And I'll say no more than that about the specifics. There's a tiny bit more information on IMDb, but I don't want to give away too much just in case you don't want any great detail. And the various pitfalls that come with that, and a lot of emotions. And I will say it feels very realistic in some ways. It's definitely believable with a lot of the characters' responses to things, their attitudes to things. They're not characters I particularly like, but I do think they were well written in some regards, but also kind of annoying. So I don't know. They're realistic, but I really found them very irritating. So do with that what you will. The narrative itself, it seemed like it could have been really interesting for me. It seemed like it could have been quite suspenseful and definitely something unpredictable. And yeah, I would say it's unpredictable to an extent, but not interesting. The events that were happening, I just didn't care for. And as I said, I think that is largely down to personal preference. It's not my kind of story. But at the same time, it does seem like there's a lot of filler in this. It's quite a long film. It's just under 2 hours, and it really didn't need to be. And because we have what I think is a boring narrative, very slow and unlikable, in my opinion, unlikable characters, it was a bit tedious to sit through. Again, partly personal preference, but I also think the film needed a bit of a polishing, a bit more work. Kelsey Grammer was fine, obviously. If you're a Kelsey Grammer fan, you'll like him in this. And the performances were really good. I have to say, credit where it's due. The performances were good, music good, camera angles good. No issues with any of that. For me, it was just the story and the characters. And to be fair, those are the two things that I personally look for when watching a film. If a film has a decent story, then I don't care if the camera work's dodgy, or if the characters are really interesting. I don't mind if maybe the lighting's not that great, but actually the technical aspects here, all very, very good, very well done. Performances, really strong. I do think some of the characters were very well written in terms of being believable and realistic. But for me, that didn't necessarily mean they were interesting. So I didn't enjoy it. I can't really think of anything I liked about this, anything that appealed to me. So definitely largely in terms of personal preference. But if somebody is typically drawn to this kind of film and they were to say, actually, I really love this, it's a really, really good story for my personal preferences, then yeah, maybe I could understand that. If it sounds like something that would really appeal to you, give it a go. You might like it more than I did. But if it's generally not your kind of story, I'd say it's not going to be one of those hidden gems that actually is much better than expected. So The Good Humor Man might appeal to some people. I don't think it would appeal to everybody. Unfortunately, it's not one that worked for me.